So I will let you do the big reveal, I guess. But why don't you share with everyone what we're working on?
Sure. So the big reveal, the mission really, it's how to pass your freedom down to the next generation and do something that once the time has passed, you don't get a do-over. There's no second chances for a first birth. And that's what we're really thinking about is where do we give birth to our child so that they have even more freedom than myself? And this whole big venture is we want to empower the people out there to plan boldly after they hear this idea of giving birth abroad. Like it's scary, we understand. So the whole venture is to empower the parents out there to actually plan, do what makes sense, and have help with the details and every step along the way, so they can do that. They can execute that plan. So long story short, the company is called My Birth Abroad, and that's what we're doing. Very straightforward.
So it's been very interesting. In the intro, I mentioned that you have three children, all born in three different countries. I have three children, all born in three different countries. And we've been very purposeful about this. So we both have a Brazilian child. We both have a Chilean child. And we've kind of gone through this, your family and my family, at roughly the same time over the last several years. And we know each other because we worked together in the very beginning. We started working together in a client consulting type of relationship, and then we became friends, and our families became friends, and now we are doing this venture together. And I think it's really, really exciting. And we've got another partner who is joining the team. The three of us together are putting together the company, and as you mentioned, it's called My Birth Abroad. And the idea is really to be helping families to move to another country for a limited amount of time, but be able to have and the benefits of that move is going to give the child advantages throughout the rest of their life. And I just think that that is so, so amazing. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about maybe the reasons why or why we have come to this conclusion on these types of advantages for the kids. And then I want to get into with you a little bit of details about the different countries and why we chose Brazil and Chile and, other places in the world that we're going to be working in.
Of course, and it always starts with why. And when we initially did this review, or even back in the day when I told my parents about this, the kind of looks and the questions that we would get is, you can imagine, that sounds crazy. Why would you fly to a place that you don't even speak the language, give birth there? And it really comes down to this: like, do you really want to set up your kids for success? I think almost every parent is going to say, 110%, they're going to say yes, absolutely. And so the next question becomes, do you want to do a little bit of work, 3 months, more if you like it, 3 months, and set them up for a whole entire lifetime, but also every generation after them?
That's the key. Let's pause for 1 second there. That's the piece that I think all families, or call it 99% of the families, miss. As you said, all parents want to set their kids up for success. All parents love their kids. We get that. But most parents are not thinking about all future generations. They're not thinking about future grandkids, great grandkids, great grandkids. They're not thinking that far ahead. But I think it's so, so important and so interesting to do an example like that or do an exercise like that and try to think 100 years in the future or a couple hundred years in the future and decisions that we can make today for our family, which are going to have things that move you forwards throughout all of this.
Exactly. And I since I can't predict the future with 100% certainty, let me just create options. And so if I create these options, my child would have the optionality of keeping the same citizenship wherever they're born and pass it all the way down to their child. And again, it comes to options. If one of the countries I choose today, in 200 years, they become not a great place to be a citizen of, they don't have to pass it down to their child. They can pick another one. And it's really this optionality in the face of volatility. As we're talking about like, tariffs, what's going on, all that. In the face of volatility, options are the answer.
100%. I have always looked at things that it's like, okay, I try to make decisions with the information have on hand, and I try to make the best decisions possible with that information. But in the reality, you have no idea what's going to happen in the future. You're just constantly trying to move forward one step at a time. You're guessing, but I never want to assume that I have the right answer. And if I don't make that assumption that I have the right answer, then what I need is options. I need to have multiple different things. So as you keep coming to a crossroads, you can make a different type of choice. And but if you have no options, you really have only one choice. So I think that's why having multiple citizenships, and for our kids having multiple citizenships, and having that being able to be passed on to all future generations is still extremely applicable and extremely valuable. You hear all these comments of, well, in the future, they won't even have passports and they won't even have this and all these kinds of things. Fine. But I still think that there are so many things that go into this with cultural ties, and we might not have the same physical type of passport we have here, but I think the nation state is still going to be around for the foreseeable future. And the more options we have and be able to be on both sides of the walls as these are being put up, that leaves things open to you guys that if you try to just make a bet on what is going to be the best one, I think this is going to be working out a lot better.
And exactly. The other aspect is we know having options, extra citizenships, residencies today will benefit you. And we don't know what the future is. So if you're a parent listening to this, it's like, do you really want something that might happen in the future to stop you from taking advantage of something that is going to give you a benefit today? So it's, you got to weigh the options. And so the whole coming back to the whole story is like we do want to empower parents that are open-minded and they're thinking about the next generation and the next generation and the whole entire family tree so they can plan and achieve these options without being bogged down by the logistics, right? Because I think we both admit giving birth in a place that you don't really know can be challenging. It's a bit scary. So that's why we started this.
It is a huge adventure at the same time. I mean, it's so easy to look at the uncomfortableness of the situation, but I always try to like flip it on its head and be like, this is a big adventure and we get to do something interesting with our spouses. And by the way, both of our spouses are so courageous and so brave. And,
Yes.
the way that they look at this and kind of have such a good attitude towards it really impresses me about both of our spouses. The interesting thing, to go back to the point on the next generation, I just got back yesterday, 2 days ago, from speaking at a conference in the United States, and the theme of the conference was dynasty. And I was speaking about starting a family office and writing our family constitution, and I was giving examples from my family on how we've set ourselves up to be influential and wealthy for not just my generation or my kids' generation, but 100 years, 500 years, etc. And the work that we're going to be doing, or have just started doing together on mybirthabroad.com, is a very important piece of that. The family constitution that we drafted for my family, for the Thorpe family, really pulls on value systems from Latin America, from Asia, from China, from Western society, from Christianity, from all of these types of different value systems and philosophical ideas. And to go even further back in our conversation, when you talk about, close to 200 countries in the world and different perspective, and what are the chances of us knowing the exact right thing? The way that I've always looked at it is that there is so many different ways to see the world, and everybody thinks that they're doing it the best possible. They've had their own historical ways of going through it. I don't think there's one culture that looks at history and goes, oh, we purposefully chose all the wrong moves, and we're happy with that. Like, countries all think that they're making the right choices, and there's reasons for doing those. Being a traveler and exploring the world and visiting to more than 100 countries, I've been able to cherry pick what I have seen works really, really well with different societies and different cultures. And then anytime you're able to strengthen your relationship with those cultures, adds a more meaningful experience.